Welcome, and thank you for standing by. Currently, all participants are in a listen-only mode. Today's webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be posted publicly. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. Now I'd like to turn the webinar over to your host for today, Deb Rivera.
Great. Thank you so much, Lisa. And good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this webinar event on data.census.gov, Geography Fundamentals for Beginners. I am your host, Deb Rivera, and in this webinar, we will explore geographies through the map feature on data.census.gov, from larger levels to smaller geographies, so you all can master the fundamentals of census geographies. So as always, I want to take a moment and thank my Census Bureau colleagues for joining me today and helping to support our speaker. Now, I will turn things over to our presenter in just a moment, but first I have a few housekeeping items to share. We would like to encourage you all to make use of the Q&A panel in WebEx to submit questions throughout the presentation. If you have questions related to today's topic, please submit them through the Q&A panel. Just make sure to select the All Panelists option from the drop-down menu. This allows all of our panelists to see your question. And at the end of the webinar, we will go over some of those questions that were submitted through the Q&A panel. A quick note, the Q&A session today will focus on the platform data.census.gov. We will not be able to go in depth to address questions on the data collection process, methodology, or other census products. Now, one last thing, we are recording the webinar today. All of the materials for this training will be available through the Census Academy website. Welcome again. Thank you so much for joining us. And it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Noemi Mendez. Welcome, Noemi.
Hi, thank you so much, Deb. I'm going to go ahead and get started. So a little bit about me. Again, my name is Noemi. And I'm here this afternoon to introduce you to one of my favorite subjects, census geography. It's important to get a good grasp on census geos because they're the foundation of the census data. And you'll see once we get into data.census.gov, you'll see how the geography filters will let you see specific types of data. So here's what I'm going to be covering this afternoon. First, we're going to learn a little bit about our data.census.gov platform. That's the platform I'm going to be using to maneuver and show you different types of census geographies. Then we're going to talk about a little bit about census data as well. The two types, we're going to look at the American Community Survey and the decennial census. The bulk of the afternoon, of the webinar, we're going to look at census geography. We're going to do an overview, and then I'm going to talk to you about geographies and then show you what they look like on data.census.gov. So let's start off with what is data.census.gov. This is the primary platform to access data from the U.S. Census Bureau. It makes data available from one centralized place so that data users spend less time searching for data content and more time using it. The census data is disseminated through the Census Bureau's API, or Application Programming Interface. And this streamlined approach means that data users have access to Census Bureau data and content in a single place. And this is the URL we'll be visiting this afternoon, data.census.gov. Okay, how to find census data. So when you're using data.census.gov, one of the things that you need to know is your geography. First, you need to know what geography or geographies you need before looking for data. State, county, ZICTA, census tract, etc. And you look for your subject, whether it's demographic data, economic data, housing data, etc. Then you search for your year. The American Community Survey, or ACS, is an ongoing survey that provides vital information on a yearly basis about our nation and its people. So over 3.5 million households are sampled each year. And this is the URL to learn more about the ACS. Data is collected in the ACS by questionnaire, in person, and online. You can get ACS data down from the nation level to the block group level, and I'm going to show you what those look like. And then data is released in the fall. There's 2 estimates depending on the geographies that you're using, and we're going to go over that. There's a 1-year estimate in the fall, and in the winter we release the 5-year estimates. And then again, data is accessed via data tools on our website. The decennial census. The U.S. Census counts each resident of the country where they live on April 1st every 10 years, ending in 0. The Constitution mandates the enumeration to determine how to apportion the seats in the House of Representatives amongst the states. So how is decennial data collected? Online, mail, phone, and via census enumerators that visit households that didn't respond initially, especially in the areas with low internet access or very remote areas. The levels of geography, this data is available from the nation to the block level. Data is released depending on selected timetables, and data is accessed via tools on our census website. For more information on the decennial census, please visit this link. So when we get into this is the meat and potatoes of data.census.gov. So how can you tell the difference between a decennial table and an American community table? So first of all, the table will tell you that is decennial census or ECS or any of the other types of surveys and data we have on the website. So this is a decennial census table. Also, decennial census tables have like P1 for population, housing, starting with an H. So that's how you can differentiate from something like the American Community Survey, where the tables, there's B and C and other tables, and then they have the number of the table right next to it. Okay, let's get into the meat. Let's talk about census geography. So geography plays an important role in all the Census Bureau activities. It provides the framework or the structure and foundation that's used to collect and publish data, including survey estimates. So it's broken down into 2 different types of geographies. We have legal geographies. These are geographies that have a legal status and are not regulated by the Census Bureau. These include counties, places, legislative school districts, etc. Then we have statistical geographies. The Census Bureau is responsible for defining several other geographies, such as census tracts, block groups, blocks, places, zictas, etc. And we're going to be looking at many of these geographies this afternoon. And to learn more about our geography program, this is the link to the website. This is a census geographic hierarchy. So this looks at geographies that are collected. This one is specific to the American Community Survey. They might be different hierarchies for different products that we collect data for. But it shows you how things kind of fall underneath each other. So the biggest geography we have is the nation, the United States. And there's different geographies that are, fall underneath that umbrella. Today, we're going to look at specifically regions, states, and what's called a zip code tabulation area. That's a way that the Census Bureau delineates zip codes, and we call them a tabulation area. Underneath states, we'll have places, and then we'll have counties. Counties have county subdivisions, census tracts, block groups, and census blocks. So census blocks nest within block groups nest within tracts, and tracts nest within counties, and I'm going to show you what that means. So I'm going to first start off with 3 geographies here. We're going to have regions and states and zip code tabulation areas. So here's a map that shows under the nation, we have these census regions. And a lot of us are familiar with these already because, these are things we're taught at in school. We have the Northeast region, the South region, the Midwest region, and the West region. I want to point out that Alaska and Hawaii are part of the Western region. Within those regions, we have divisions. We have the New England, Mid-Atlantic, Middle Atlantic, South Atlantic, East, North, Central, East, South, Central, West, North, Central, West, South, Central, Mountain, and Pacific. And again, Alaska and Hawaii are under those two. So here's another chart that breaks down the regions and divisions with FIPS codes. FIPS codes are useful if you're mapping out particular geographies, if you're joining tables, especially of those of you who do GIS or mapping, you'll be familiar with those codes. So now I'm going to go into data.census.gov and show you how to find these geographies. So this is the website. It's literally called data.census.gov, and that's the URL as well. So there's a couple different ways to find data on here. But what I'm specifically going to do is I'm going to use the advanced search. So here on the left, you're going to see some filters. It starts with geography filters. We're going to go through some of those. And then we have a topics filter, the different surveys that are loaded on data.census.gov. Here's those years and some other codes for business data. So I'm just going to go ahead and start off with our higher level. So region is not on here. So if there's a geography on here that you don't see, click on all geographies. And then you can go ahead and pan through these, or you can use the search geographies, and you can just type in. Okay. So here's our region. I'm going to select all of them. So once I have my geography selected, I'm going to click on the map tab. I'll slow down a little bit too in case I'm going too fast. I'm going to go ahead and kind of make these guys a little bit smaller. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and zoom in. So as you start zooming in with the area, the closer you get, this is called scale dependent. You start zooming in, and now you can start seeing some of the geography. So I have South, Northeast, Midwest, and if I zoom out a little bit, you can see how Alaska and Hawaii have the same naming convention. Okay, so those are your regions. So to find your divisions, I'm going to show you a way to do some mapping here. I'm going to go to more tools, and I'm going to select on boundaries. Now, right now, they're showing a couple different geographies. It's showing the regions, and it's showing the individual states. So if I want to look at divisions, I would click on each of the divisions, the little boxes here. Okay, so now that I've turned them on, you can see the same divisions that we saw on our static map. So I just want to let you know that if you do choose geographies to display using boundaries, it will give you the layer with that information. When you use the filters, and if you want to grab data, you'll have to grab the geography using filters. It's a little confusing, but if you just want to go ahead and look at a map of an area, use the boundaries. But if you want to collect data for a specific geography, you're going to use the filters. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to my presentation. Let's talk about zip codes. Lots of people love data by zip codes because it's a geography that we're pretty much aware of. So like, you know the zip code that you live in. But it's a little bit of a kind of a caveat with zip codes. So I'm going to go over some of this with everyone this afternoon. So zip codes are created for mail delivery by the U.S. Postal Service, right? It's kind of a route that your postal person takes to deliver mail. ZICTAs, the zip code tabulation areas, these are created by the Census Bureau, and they're approximate representations of zip codes. So zip codes are a linear feature. ZICTAs are polygons that are created from those linear lines. So ZICTAs are created to be sort of neighborhoods because people who are sometimes doing a study of an area, they want neighborhood level data. But we don't create neighborhood level data. So we've created these ZICTAs instead. But remember that not all zip codes may have a ZICTA. So in most cases, the ZICTA number will be the same as the zip code number. However, some addresses that have a ZICTA then may differ from the USPS zip code. ZICTAs are more stable than zip codes and they change less frequently. The Census Bureau will only update our zip code tabulation areas every 10 years. So if you're looking for data from 2010, 2011, 2012, et cetera, till 2020, those zip codes will not have changed. We don't control how the Postal Service updates their zip codes, but we're the stewards of ZICTAs. So let me show you what that looks like. Search again. Now, ZICTAs is a frequently accessed geography, so you can see it. It's right here. I'm going to be using Rhode Island as an example. Many of my demonstrations today. It's a nice compact state. So you can select individual ZICTAs if you know the ones that you want, but I'm going to go ahead and select all the 5-digit codes so we can get a map of all of the ZICTAs, excuse me, in Rhode Island. So here's a map, and it's going to give you the entire nation because this is a nationwide sort of level. So here we go for Rhode Island. You can start seeing, and if you start zooming in, you can start seeing the labels. It might take a while. Okay, so if you're interested in that sort of neighborhood ZICTA geography stuff, go ahead, and this is how you use ZICTAs. Let's move on to our next geography. So we've done the nationwide, kind of like the ones that are higher level. Let's move on to some of these smaller level geographies. Okay, we're going to do places and county subs, and then counties, tracts, blocks, and block groups. And remember, blocks, block groups, and tracts will nest under counties. So I also like this graphic because it shows how everything nests into each other. So I'm going to start with the top line here. We're going to look at counties. Then within counties, we're going to look at what's called a minor civil division, or an MCD, or a census county division, a CCD. And then we're going to look at places. So we'll go into it depending on what part of the country you're from. Your state may have MCDs or CCDs. Okay, counties. A lot of us know what a county is. We know what county we live in. But I'm just going to go over how the census thinks about counties. So counties are a primary legal division of states that serve as a unit for local government administration. They have these defined legal boundaries and levels of governmental authority. Note Connecticut, and this is relatively new. The state of Connecticut uses 9 planning regions as county equivalents, and that first begun in 2022. So do I have a screenshot of this? I'll show you data.census.gov. When you are looking for data for Connecticut, it might still have counties, but sometimes that's used for economic data, might be a little bit different, but you'll see the 9 planning regions written out. It'll say like Hartford planning region, and those will be the ones you would use for that data. Did everyone see my data.census? It's not, just give me a shout out. Okay. Back to the advanced search. Island, and I'm going to do all counties. Okay. So here we go. Here's all the counties in Rhode Island. I believe there's 6 of them. 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. And as you zoom in, you can start seeing their names. We're going to be using Kent County this afternoon when we start looking at some of the sub-county geographies. That's going to be our model for the rest of the afternoon. County subdivisions. So we're going to look at minor civil divisions first. We call them MCDs. These are legal geographies in 29 states, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, and our island areas. They may have a formal government with elected officials. And then we have census county divisions, or CCDs. These are statistical geographies in 21 states. They're non-governmental, meaning that they don't have a legal or government function. They're defined by the Census Bureau in cooperation with local officials for those states that do not have sub-county governmental units. And I know this is a lot of governmental speak, but I'm going to show you this map here. So depending on where you're located, when you're looking at data for data.census.gov, you're going to see the white ones are the minor civil divisions, the MCDs, okay? And then the bulk, the rest of the nation has census county divisions. So what does that look like? So if you're in data.census.gov, you're going to use county subdivision for both MCDs and CCDs. The difference is when you start selecting your state. So for instance, I selected Montana, Beaverhead County, and then when you look at the county subdivisions, you can go ahead and it shows you how the name of them and it has whether it's a CCD. So this is a CCD state, as opposed to Rhode Island. When you go and you do a county subdivision, you don't see the CCDs and that's an MCD state. And I'm kind of getting into the weeds of these, but I want you to, make sure if you're looking at a CCD state, it's still a county subdivision. It's just parsed out a little bit differently. Also, one neat thing, if you want to get back to data.census.gov, just click on the logo and it's going to take you back. Okay. And here's our counties. Okay, so I'm going to pick up from where we were with Rhode Island and selecting counties. I'm going to select county subdivisions. We're going to look at Kent County as an example. So it's going to give us all the towns and other county subdivisions, but I want to look at all of them. Let's give it a second to catch up. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on maps. Everything's a little slow, I apologize. So here is our county, and these are the county subdivisions within this county. If I zoom in a little bit, you can see there's a Warwick town, West Warwick town, and a Warwick city. So that can be a little complicated, but this is what it looks like. Okay, let's move on. Just make sure I'm within the right spot. I might have to start over for a little bit. Okay, county subdivisions. We went through these. Here's our map. The difference between CCDs and MCDs. And let's talk about census places. These are municipalities, cities or towns or townships, depending where you are, villages and boroughs. These are populated places, so there is a population there. These are named locations that appear as points on maps. They're areas that are associated with a specific name. And what's interesting about places is they're very kind of organic, while they can expand or contract as population grows or shrinks. And also same thing for commercial activity as well. So let's go and look at places on data.census.gov. Go to advanced search again. Let's go to filters, if I can get there. Here go our filters. I'm going to clear everything out. We're going to go into places and then go back to Rhode Island. So you see places. Remember how when we looked at county subdivisions, their container was a county? For places, their container is the entire state. So I'm going to select all places in Rhode Island. So that's one of the big differences between places and county subs. Let me just give it a little bit for the system to catch up. Here's our map. Okay, so see with Rhode Island, you can see those places. You can zoom in, okay? So they are contained within counties. We can turn on the county filter and see which places are in there, but when you map them out, it's going to be for the entire state, okay? So let's move on to the smaller levels of geography. Let's talk about census tracts, block groups, and blocks. census tracts. These are small, relatively permanent. This is a statistical geography, not a political geography. It's a subdivision of a county or statistical equivalent used by the Census Bureau for collecting and presenting census data. Census tracts typically contain between 2,500 people and 8,000 people. Optimally, they like to keep it around 4,000. A census tract usually covers a contiguous area, meaning one big area. However, the spatial size of census tracts will vary widely depending on how dense the settlement is. So census tract boundaries are delineated or drawn with the intention of being maintained over a long time so that the statistical comparisons can be made from census to census. The Census Bureau does a program every 10 years before each decennial census, where the Census Bureau works with local governments to maintain these geographies. So if an area has grown, they'll split a tract. So for instance, this tract was at some point in the past was Census Tract 5, but there was a growth in the population, so they wanted to keep it according to specific criteria. So that tract was broken into 501 and 502. And then you can see in the tract the individual block groups and blocks that make it up. Census tracts, again, occasionally split due to population growth or decline, and they follow visible features like roads and other things like that. And then they can also do non-visible ones. For rural areas, you'll see stuff like line of sight. Okay, so let's look at census tracts. I'm going to select all census tracts here and then go to our map. So this is another geography that's pretty popular if you're looking at maybe neighborhood data. These are probably bigger neighborhoods, but you can see in this county, they all start with 200. But I want to point out this 9,800 tract. This is a special usage tract. So if you see census tracts that start in 9,800, it could be, it's usually a commercial, some kind of like other military facility. This happens to be a local airport. So there's no population there. So the Census Bureau distinguishes this from some of the other tracts that are around it by giving it this special code. Block groups. Block groups are statistical divisions of census tracts and are usually contain between 600 and 3,000 people. They can cover a contiguous area. Contains at least one block groups, and block groups are uniquely numbered within each census tract. They never cross state, county, or census tract boundaries, but may cross the boundaries of other geographies. So here's our block groups. These go by county, like census tracts do, and just select all of them. So here we go. So when you zoom into here, you can see within the census tract the block groups that are part of them. So it's a little hard to see, but they're the light orange colored numbers here. So you see the tract is sort of red, and then the block groups that become part of that tract are numbered, starting number 1 through how many are needed there. So this one, tract 204, has 1, 2, and 3 census tracts. Census blocks. This is the smallest level geography. These are they're statistical areas that are bounded by visible features such as streets, roads, streams, and railroad tracks, and by non-visible boundaries such as property lines, city, towns, school districts, and county limits. And for rural areas, short, light of sign extensions of streets and roads. What's nice about census blocks, for instance, where you live in, the block that you live in, are almost most likely the same as a census block. So they're small, and so again, a city block bounded by sides by all streets. In suburban and rural areas, they might be a little bit bigger, a little more irregular in shape, and then bounded by the physical features such as roads, streams, or transmission lines. In remote areas, blocks can be hundreds of square miles. And then blocks cover the entire territory of the United States, Puerto Rico, and the island areas. So when you're looking at the digit of a census block, the first digit of the census block identifies the block group. Block numbers beginning with the 0 are intended to include only water areas. So remember, like I talked about the 9800 tract, if you see blocks that start with the number 0, they're water blocks. So especially if you're like in Maryland, you'll see a lot of water blocks, or a lot of states that are surrounded by water or have a lot of water within them. Well, let's do this. I'm going to select, see if I can select this P1 table, because it'll be easier to see the blocks with the decennial table. That's just sort of how it works here. Okay. So let me go here, and I'm going to, give me 1 second. Okay, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I'm going to turn on a little bit, but I'm going to also, so if you start zooming in here, let me see if I can find a better area. I like this kind of area that we were in earlier. Start zooming in. Do you see the white lines? Those are the blocks that are, and then you'll see some roads. So that's how to get data. You can't get a lot of data at the block level because the data suppression kicks in. So you won't get a whole lot of data available because of the confidentiality requirements. But I just kind of wanted to show you what they look like. So remember, so we have a census tract, and then our block groups, and then our blocks. That's how they nest together. So I wanted to do, if we have some time still, kind of like how does the census geography work? Like if I have a problem that I'm trying to solve, how do I use census geography and data.census.gov to solve my problem? So I have this kind of hypothetical situation where maybe you're interested in opening up a bookstore or a store in a particular area, but maybe you're looking for data for your business plan, right? So how do I find the data that I need? So we're going to look at Warwick and see whether or not it's an MCD county, it's a county subdivision or a place. We're going to look and do census tracts and say, I'm going to look maybe for some income or age data, and I'm going to try to find those areas that have the highest concentration for the data that I want, okay? And then it's going to ask, are you going to choose American Community Survey data or decennial census data? And then at the end, like, how do I download data, okay? So let's go back to our advanced search. So let's see. With Warwick, a place or a county sub? I'm just going to go ahead and let us know that it is a county sub. I'm going to go to Rhode Island and do Kent County. I'm going to show you a little trick here if it works. So you see this like within other geographies thing. If I can click on it, it'll say place, and then you can go ahead and type in Warwick, and it'll automatically select that area for you. But because it's not working, I'm just going to go ahead and do Kent. Oh, here's Warwick City. There we go. Let's go to the map. Well, let's do all county subs. How about that? See if it'll let me do all of them. So here's Warwick City. This is the area that I'm going to be interested in getting data for. You can pull some data here, like if you want to look at sex and age for this geography. We can look at the table. So this is a table, subject table 0101. This is an American Community Survey table, and it's the 5-year estimates. So what it's giving us is a breakdown of the total population per percent and estimates. So you can kind of see if maybe you're interested in looking at a bookstore for children, you can go ahead and say, hey, here's the estimate for this particular area. What's the estimate? And it gives you the margin of error as well. because it's a survey, there's always some variance and there's always a margin of error. So if let's say we want to go and say, go back to our map. So here's Warwick City. And if you want to get a lower level geography, this might be a good way to either look at ZICTA data or census data or census tract data. Okay, give me one sec. Okay, I'm going to have to maybe just bail on this. Do we have any questions that I can possibly answer?
Hey, Noemi, yes, we do have questions that have come in if you'd like to transition over. Okay, all right. We can absolutely do that. Let me just pull up my file here. Okay, perfect. So, all right, so let's go ahead and move on to the questions that we have received so far. The first question reads, is there a fast way to add 20 plus counties within a state?
You would have to select it individually unless you went through the filter and you started typing in the name, kind of like the type ahead, and it will kind of say, like if you're looking at Smith County and you start typing FMI, you can click on Smith that way. It's not like a GIS where you can kind of grab like a bunch of them. So this is it's a little slower, but you can definitely grab as many geographies as you need, especially for those sub-level geographies.
Okay.
Hope that answers.
Yep, and that's actually the first part of the question. The second one reads, and is there perhaps a way to save the filters to apply to other data sets?
What I would do is you can actually copy the URL and use that and open up another instance of data.census.gov. And then if you want to keep your first instance and not mess with it, but you want to kind of do another session, just open up another browser, type in the URL, and then you can go and do your filters that way.
All right, thank you, and thank you for that question. Our next question reads, actually, this is more of a request. One of our participants wanted to see the slide for county subdivisions. So
Sure.
If you can go back to that particular
Absolutely.
slide, Noemi, and just give us some key highlights on county subdivisions.
Sure, let me get back to those. Okay. So like again, county subdivisions depend on whether you're in an MCD state or a CCD state. Remember I showed you that map. So they're basically similar. It's just whoever is the overseer. Is there a government or is there not a government? Because sometimes you'll have these county subdivisions that they might be a place and they may not have, like a government over them. So MCDs, and these are legal. The CCDs are statistical. That's the other big difference. So in 29 states, District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, and island areas, they're considered minor civil divisions, okay? So they have a formal government and they have elected officials. Like I live in a state that's an MCD state, so my township has elected officials, okay? County subdivisions, you'll see those more in rural areas. So there's a state and there might be some geographies that have elected officials, but there might be other areas where there's a population that's recognized and it has a name. Maybe it's been there for a very long time, but there's no government that adjudicates over it. So the Census Bureau works with those states to create these geographies so that they can get data down to that town or city level. So those are in 21 states. Again, they don't have a legal or functioning government, and they're defined with the Census Bureau in cooperation with those geographies to make sure that they can get census data for them.
Perfect. Thank you so much for going over those points again. And thank you so much for the question. Our next question reads, do the blocks cover tribal lands?
Yes. Blocks cover the entire nation, so every part of the country there's blocks, okay? And that's the kind of like the foundation. So if you think of it as playing with Legos, those blocks are the small level of Legos. So American Indian areas and tribal nations, that's a great geography. And that's one of the ones that I'm hoping to cover in another webinar. Let's see if I can go up to, without making people dizzy, my see if it's on here. My chart might be too simple. Oh, here we go. So see here, next to regions, you'll see American Indian areas, Alaska Native areas, Hawaiian homelands. They are very distinct geography and they're under the nation level, but we do collect and release data for those geographies and down to the census tract level as well for ACS.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for the question. Our next question reads, can water blocks have population such as floating homes?
So that's a good question. Usually they do not, but if they do, or if they are captured, if like a Census Bureau representative or field staff member goes and says, hey, there is a house there, they will be counted, but because the data is so small, we can't legally release any information about that. There's a threshold that they have to meet in order to be able for us to release data. So we will capture it, and it'll go into like the count for like a bigger, or, for like whatever township or city it's in, and then that'll go to the county and it'll go to the state. So it will be captured. We just won't release data for it.
Perfect. Thank you. And I think maybe this question may be a separate question, but it reads, could you talk about the strengths and or limitations of the smaller geography levels for researchers focusing on rural areas?
So yeah, that's a great question because it depends honestly on the rural area that you're studying. You can look at, the census tract. Block groups might not be so helpful because it has to do with the margin of error. So if you're looking at a geography and there's a very big margin of error, you may want to go up to the next available level. So if you're looking at block groups and your margin, you're not happy, it's like a huge margin of error, go up to the census tract level and see what's available there. That's if you're looking for that kind of like micro data. That's what I would say. I would say just keep going up a level until you have some data that doesn't have a huge margin of error. And we release the margins of error for ACS.
Okay.
It's whatever you're comfortable with is what I would say.
Yep. All right. Thank you for that, Noemi. Thank you so much for the question. And we're getting a lot of good ones here. This one reads, is this recording going to be available later? And Noemi, if you don't mind, I will take that one. Sure. Yes, we are recording this webinar. And we will be able to post it within probably the next week or so. Usually it takes a little bit less, but 3 to 5 business days, that will be available through the Census Academy website. We will also include a written transcript and the PowerPoint slides that you've seen here. So thanks for all those questions that we're getting. The next one reads, and Noemi, you'll love this one. Does the Census Bureau provide a tutorial course on this subject?
Oh, is that a planted question? Yes, we do have some tutorials available. I just kind of want to quickly just have this screen up about our tips and tricks, but I'm going to go ahead and move on to our section here. We do have workshops that are fantastic. They're led by our staff here. So if you can see these, we have different types of workshops depending on what you're looking at. So we have a great mapping one. We have great, data.census.gov ones, and we will be having a geography essential for beginners, a longer course. If you decide to sign up for it, you're going to be having me again as your speaker, whoever, usually me or one of our fantastic other staff, and you'll have questions that you can work on while we're all together in the workshop. So will be coming up soon.
Yes, and a little bit more on that. We do have some sessions already scheduled through the end of May. So if you visit that link or scan the barcode that you see on the top right of the screen, it should bring you to that website where you can register for one of those courses that we're going to hold. So thanks everyone for your interest on that. And Noemi, I think we have time for maybe one more question here. Let me
Sure.
pull it up here. All right, so this next one is, when looking at an ACS table, how can you tell immediately if it's 1 year or 5 year?
So if you are selecting, let's say, a county, you will be able to look and see. Yeah, let's see if I can, let me see if I can get into DCG. So right now, so the level of geography is going to dictate whether you get the 1 year or the 5 year. So there's a threshold where if a geography is above that threshold, you can get the 1 year and the 5 year. If it's below the threshold, you're only going to get the 1 year. So I wish I could open up the table, because the table will tell you it's ACS, the date, and if it's a 1 year sample. And then if it's a bigger geography, you can click down and you can actually switch between the 5 year and the 1 year. The benefit of the 5 years is that there's a less margin of error than a 1 year. But if you're doing something like a census tract or a smaller geography, you can only get the 5 year data for like the ACS. So the system will tell you, it'll filter it out for you.
Great, thank you so much. And thank you all so much for the questions. I know that they keep coming. We have our panelist working really hard to answer as many questions as she can. And unfortunately, that is all the time that we have for our Q&A today. If we did not have time to address your question, we do encourage you to send us an email at census.data@census.gov. We would love to hear from you. We have an excellent staff, and they do their very best to get back to people, usually within 24 hours, usually less. So please write us in and let us know what questions you have and how we may help you. So Noemi, you might have a couple of slides to go over. I will turn it back over to you to close us out. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to kind of go back up a little bit. So, yeah, please check out data.census.gov and feel free to provide comments. We read all the comments, and the comments help us to make the system, cater to how people are using it. If you want to receive email updates from us, we send them out every month, I believe, and then that's the little QR code for it. So I'm just going to give a couple seconds and then just kind of like move on. Also, here's our workshops. If you're interested in our workshops, there is going to be a webinar survey, I believe, that's going to automatically open. Again, here's how to reach us. This is our Stay Connected page where you can get, again, all our resources, any feedback, and training requests. And also, we have local data dissemination specialists in states across the country. So if you have an organization and you're interested in having them have a webinar catered to your organization, this is how to reach out to them. So thank you, everyone. I apologize profusely for the issues we had today, but thank you. I'd love to hear that there are people that are interested in census geography. It warms my little geography heart. So I hope to see you in the future in one of our other workshops. So thank you so much.